Magandang gabi po sa ating lahat. Muli kami po ay nagagalak na kasama namin kayo sa gabing ito. This session will actually zero in dun sa mga solusyon sa political dynasty. The past sessions we have been talking about yung pernicious na presence ng political dynasty sa ating bayan. And this time, we will have si Attorney Alex Lacson to help us to think carefully paano tayo magna-navigate dito sa napakahirap at napaka-entrenched na problema ng political dynasty.
It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker ngayong gabi. Ang ating pong speaker ay tumakbo bilang senador noong 2010 at yun ay mas nagbigay sa kanya ng pagkakataon na makita yung political situation ng bansa at nakita niya na maraming political dynasties sa buong kapuluan natin. He was the former president of ISA, a public institute that implements and runs good governance and development programs in various LGUs and national government agencies or NGAs like AFP, Civil Service Commission, DTI, Board of Investments, and many others. At dito po ay nakakilala siya ng maraming mga mayors na parte din ng political dynasty. So, hindi lang niya to alam as facts, pero nakita niya at naobserbahan niya talaga, nakita niya yung sistema. At hindi lang po siya isang mahusay na abogado at mahusay na civic servant, siya din po ay isang manunulat, no? Award-winning writer din po ang ating makakasama ngayon. In fact, he has his latest book, 500 Years Without Love. At dito ay na-single out niya yung political dynasty bilang isa sa mga problema, pinagmumulan o pinag-uugatan ng social cancer natin ngayong panahon na ito. So, let's all welcome mga kasama sa ISIP-ISAK, our suki din dito, Attorney Alex Lacson. Magandang gabi, Attorney Alex.
Magandang gabi, Marie, at maraming salamat sa imbitasyon. I watched the shows with Dr. Ron Mendoza and Attorney Shell Jokno, and I enjoyed and learned a lot from them. But let me say at the start that the political dynasty are the biggest obstacle to our country's progress and development. They are the #1 root cause of our country's social cancer today. I have come to that conclusion after studying all the root causes of our country's social ills. And I mentioned this fact in my latest book, 500 Years Without Love. I really believe that if we can find the solution to this issue of political dynasties, many, if not all of our other major problems in the country can be addressed. Problems like corruption, wrong policies and programs, bad governance, greed and business, especially by the big business, by oligarchs, and all the other major problems in our country. This problem of political dynasties is like the bottleneck problem. We cannot solve all the other major problems because we need to solve first this issue of the political dynasties. But once we're able to find a solution to this problem of political dynasties, I dare say that we can solve all the other major problems that we have in our society. But I will explain this to you later. But first, let me explain or demonstrate to you some of the problems or some of the scenarios involving political dynasties. In Pampanga, the governor and vice governor are mag-ina, no? Mother and son. At nagkabaligtaran na ata sila. No? Ibig sabihin, tapos na yung isa na maging governor, pinalitan na siya ng anak niya na maging governor. No? Sa Isabela naman, Isabella's been a province controlled in the past 75 years by just one family. Except for those years, yung 2 terms, 2004 hanggang 2010, yung 2 terms na yun under sa Grace Padaka as governor. Apart from that, the last 75 years, practically isang pamilya lang ang may control sa Isabela. At dumadami sila doon. No? Yung kamag-anak nila, congressman, mayors, councilors, sa Maguindanao, 2 pamilya lang ang may control. In fact, yung 2 pamilya na yon, i-combine mo more than 100 relatives in position, no, in Maguindanao. In Taguig, dalawang distrito dyan sa Taguig City. Yung husband is the congressman sa 1st District. Yung asawa is the congresswoman doon sa 2nd District. And the mayor is the brother. In Makati, buong basketball team sila nandoon. No? And almost 40 years na hawak nila yung Makati. Sa Davao City, yung mayor, vice mayor, magkapatid, dati mag-ama. Or yung ama kasi naging presidente. Ngayon magkapatid, mayor, vice mayor, congressman, isa pang kapatid. Itong problema ng political dynasties sa bansa natin, this is a worsening problem. No? Lalo itong lumalala. Lalo siya nag-worsen. In the 1950s, wala kang marinig na mag-asawa. Pero yung parehong mayor, vice mayor, sabay. No? Or governor, vice governor. Pero ngayon, marami na ang ganyan. No? In fact, pumunta ka lang sa Isabela, maraming bayan doon na ang mayor, vice mayor ay mag-asawa. Kung hindi mag-asawa, mag-ina, mag-ama, magkapatid. No? Sa ibang probinsya, ganun din. Sa Zamboanga, maraming ganyan. Negros, meron din ganyan. Kung na yung sa isang mga kamag-anak, tumatawid pa yan sa kabilang probinsya o sa kabilang distrito at doon tumatakbo. No? Ganyan ang nangyari sa Zamboanga, sa kaso ng mga Halosos. Ganyan din yung nangyari sa Davao del Sur, Davao del Norte. Sa Taguig City, ganyan. Sa Ilocos Norte, apparently, parang ganun din mangyayari ngayon. Kasi yung isang Marcos na bata, tatawid at doon tatakbo bilang governor, kalaban ng Fariñas. Yung political dynasties have also infiltrated the party list system. Many of the party list representatives natin ngayon sa bansa galing sa pamilyang political dynasties. In fact, ang isa sa pinaka-famous yan, yung dating party list representative ng mga security guard sa bansa. Anak siya ng dating presidente. Yung incumbent party list representative naman ng mga jeepney drivers at taxi drivers ngayon sa bansa, anak siya ng incumbent governor sa Davao, no? Who is a multimillionaire. When Arap became president, yung asawa niya naging senator at yung dalawang anak niya pa naging senator. When Duterte became president, yung personal assistant senator, his police chief became a senator, while his son became a congressman and naging deputy house speaker. Next year's election, tingnan niyo po ito, no? Sa Senado, si Senator Binay, Nancy Binay is an incumbent senator, pero yung papa niya na dating vice president, tatakbong senator. So mag-ama, sabay sila magiging senator next year kung mananalo si dating vice president. No? Tapos yung Cayetanos, kung tatakbo din si Senator Alan Cayetano for the Senate, sasalihan niya in the Senate yung kapatid niya na si Kia Cayetano. So magkapatid here. At si Mark Villar, kung tatakbo siya as senator, sasalihan niya yung mama niya na si Senator Cynthia Villar sa Senado. Anong mangyayari? No? May isang mag-ama, yung Binays, may isang mag-ina, yung Villars, may isang dalawang magkapatid, no? Yung Cayetanos. Ganyan po, most likely, ang magiging composition ng Senado natin next year. Padami ng padami yung running in tandems, yung mag-asawa, mag-ama, mag-ina, magkapatid, mayor, vice mayor, governor, vice governor. In fact, most likely nga, baka next year, baka yung incumbent president, baka tumakbong vice president, or yung daughter niya, tatakbong president, papalitan yung incumbent president. We all know this. Our political system has become highly dynastic. And it has been captured, our political system has been captured by just around 200 political dynasties who dominate the LGUs and our Congress. Pinaghati-hatian na nila ang ating bansa. Yung mga political dynasties, kanya-kanya sila ng political kingdom sa ating bansa. Philippines is now the political dynasty capital of the world. So, why did I say kanina that the political dynasties are the biggest obstacle to our country's progress and development? Bakit ko sinabi yan? In my latest book, 500 Years Without Love, why did I call the political dynasties as the number one cause of our country's social cancer today? The number one root of our country's social ills. Why did I say that? Una, sila pinakamalaki at pinakamaraming kawatan sa ating bansa. Aminin na natin, maraming mayors, maraming congressman, maraming senators. No? At yung corruption sa LGUs, iba pa yung corruption doon sa Congress na dominated din ng mga political dynasties. Itong LGUs, alam niyo po, na perfect na nila yung system of corruption dyan. Takot ang tao na magsalita laban sa kanila. Yung contractors nila, kung hindi nila kabag-anak, kaibigan, dummies. No? So, na-perfect na nilang corruption dyan. Pagdating sa Kongreso, yung mga kamag-anak nila, yung mga dynasties, 76% of the members of Congress are also members of political dynasties. So, kontrolado nila doon. Tingnan niyo po yung yung isang newspaper article written by si Bu Chanko and later on by Jarius Bundok, no? Yung corruption na ginagawa ng at least isa sa ginagawa ng members of Congress. Nung panahon ni Speaker Alan Cayetano, there were 28 deputy speakers at bawat speaker, in addition doon sa 70 million na PDAF nila, meron pang 215 million every year, bawat isa. Bawat isa. That's according to columnist Bu Chanko and si Jarius Mondo. No? 250 million, 28 deputy speakers. No? Kailangan mo ba ng 28 deputy speakers sa bansa? But not only that, sa panahon ngayon, ni Speaker Lord Alan Velasco, there are 32 deputy speakers. At siguro, annually, meron din silang 250 million, hindi nila binago yung practice, on top of their 70 million. Now, who is monitoring them? Who is making them account for this 250 million na deputy speakers? 32 sila. No? So, but okay, iba yung corruption sa LGUs, iba yung corruption sa Congress, ng mga congressmen at senators, iba yung corruption sa NGAs, National Government Agencies, sa departments, no? Iba yung corruption sa top level sa Malacanang. No? In our country, the politicians become rich even only after a few years in public office. Samantala yung mga tao, they remain poor. So yung mga politicians, just a few years in public office, umuunlad, yung mayaman, pero yung tao na dapat pagsilbihan nila, mahirap pa rin. Our Philippines is a poor country with rich politicians because politics has become a family business in our country. Second reason kung bakit ko sinabi na bakit the number one root cause of our country's social cancer ay itong mga political dynasties. Bakit sila ang biggest obstacle to our country's progress and development? Yung business opportunity sa lugar nila, kinokontrol nila. No? Yung business opportunities, kailangan dumaan muna sa kamay nila. At pag ayaw nila, tsaka ka lang pwede. No? In fact, if you put up a business that is contrary to their interest, to their business, hindi ka makakuha ng business permits doon sa lugar nila. No? I mean, kakalabanin mo yung business ng mayor, kakalabanin mo yung business ng congressman? Hindi. No? Third reason, according to our economists, rural poverty in the Philippines is very high. In fact, in one column of Dr. Shell Habito, I remember, I think this was around 2014, 2015, he said that 40% ang rural poverty sa bansa natin nung panahon na yun. No? 40%. Kumpara mo doon sa rural poverty sa ibang bansa. Singapore was 0, no? Taiwan was only 3%. Thailand has only 14%. This was again mga 2014, 2015. Malaysia is only 8% rural poverty. But Philippines at the time was 40%. And you ask the question, bakit mataas ang rural poverty sa Pilipinas? Sino ba ang mga leaders sa probinsya? Again, political dynasties. 80% of the governors belong to political dynasties. 76% of the congressmen belong to political dynasties. Majority of our mayors in the country belong to political, magkakamag-anak sila. No? So sila ang culprit kung bakit mataas ang rural poverty sa bansa. Sila yung leaders eh. The fourth reason why I consider political dynasties as the number one, as the biggest obstacle to our country's progress and prosperity, as the number one root cause of our country's social cancer is this. Ang political dynasties in Congress, the political dynasties in Congress, they are the biggest obstacle to radical reforms that we need in this country. No? Since kontrolado nila ang Congress, walang batas na matino that can radically change our country na papasa sa Kongreso. That's why yung anti-dynasty law hindi pwedeng pumasa sa Kongreso because they would block it. Yung matino, they could not pass it because they will block it. The abolition of bank secrecy law, they will not push for it. The political party development law, they will not push for it. Why? Because it is contrary to their best interest. Kontrolado nilang Kongreso. And in this country, if you want to radically change our country, kailangan dumaan yan as batas. And ang problema lang, paano magiging batas yan? How can we pass laws that would radically change our country, that would introduce radical reforms if Congress is controlled by political dynasties? Number 5 reason why I believe that political dynasties are the biggest obstacle to our country's progress and development is because they are the worst corruptors in our society. They corrupt everything on their path. No? Especially they corrupt the system. They corrupt the system. Especially the youth. No? Itong scholars that they have, they corrupt them. Sabihin mo na may 2,000 scholars isang congressman sa bawat distrito. Or yung mayors, may scholars sila. But itong scholars, pinipili nila not based on meritocracy, but itong scholars, pinipili nila based on loyalty. So they destroy the sense of meritocracy in our country among our youth. They destroy the sense of fairness, the sense of justice of our people, especially our youth. They distort our culture of meritocracy. They are the worst corruptors. That's why in my latest book, I call the political dynasties as the number one root cause of our country's social cancer today. They are the biggest obstacle to our country's progress and development. So, what are the possible solutions? Ngayon, and ito na yung pinaka-importante, I think. No? I have 8 possible solutions. I'm looking for a way how to solve these political dynasties. Kung minsan kahit kung saan ako nagsasakyan, I keep on thinking about it. Nasa trono ako, I keep on thinking about it while eating in the dining table. I keep on thinking about it. How do we stop these political dynasties in our country? I have 8 possible solutions. No? The number 1, I say 8 possible solutions because some of these possible solutions, while they are there in the Constitution, if we use them, they might actually create more problems for us instead of solving the problem. Okay, let me begin with 1. The first possible solution, as enshrined in the Constitution, is amendment of the Constitution by CONAS. No? Ibig sabihin, you amend the Constitution, and you introduce the reforms, no? Anti-political dynasty provision. But when you amend the Constitution by CONAS, Constituent Assembly, ibig sabihin, the existing Congress right now, you will transform them, convert them into the body that would amend the Constitution. That's very dangerous. Why? Because the Congress is dominated by political dynasties, 76% of them. So if they would revise the Constitution, tapos sila yung mag-ayos doon, most likely they would only introduce their own interests, protect their own interests. And second, the moment you open up the Constitution for revision, tapos sila magre-revise, most likely they would also touch the other provisions of the Constitution. So the second possible solution, it's not a solution at all if you ask me, yung amendment by CONAS. The second con, again, this is also a dangerous mode of amending the Constitution for two reasons. No? Why? Those who will run, in CONCON kasi is Constitutional Convention. Ibig sabihin, there will be an election to call for members of the CONCON, and the CONCON would amend or revise the Constitution. But pag nagkaroon ng election, sino kaya ang tatakbo? Most likely the relatives or the lieutenants of the political dynasties. Kasi control na nila doon yung mga distrito sa baba. 76%. And once you open up the Constitution for revision by this CONCON, dominated by the relatives and lieutenants of political dynasties, they would revise it to suit their interest. So this is also a dangerous possible solution. The third possible solution is legislation by Congress. Ibig sabihin, mag-pass ng batas about anti-dynasty law. But this will not happen. Why? Because Congress is dominated by political dynasties. That's the third. It's a possible solution, but it's not a solution also. Number 4, possible solution is awareness campaign versus political dynasties. This is a lot of work, no? And this kind of work needs the involvement and participation of every sector in our society to campaign against political dynasties. It's possible, but it's long shot also. We have been doing this at least for the past more than 30 years, campaigning against political dynasties, and we have not succeeded in a big way, but there are some or a few successes. The fifth possible solution is educational reform. Alam niyo po, we all recognize the importance of leadership for our country. But how come sa curriculum ng mga high school students or college students natin, how come we don't have a subject on how to elect good leaders for our country? My proposal po is that there should be a subject devoted to this. Put it in grade 10 or grade 11. One subject, one SEM. Teach our kids on how to vote properly, on how to vote for good leaders. Make it a subject, because leadership is one of our biggest problems in our country. So make it a subject. So I call this educational reform. If we can introduce this in grades 10 and 11, by the time they turn 18, they would know already how to elect, vote properly. No? Now the next 3 possible solutions, the 6, the 7, and the 10, in my opinion, ito yung real solutions. No? These solutions, in my opinion, are doable, attainable, and really possible solutions. No? So let me discuss the 6 possible solutions. I call this the piecemeal legislation. No? In 2013, I was part of a group called Andaya, Political Dynasty Movement. No? Eventually, later on, nag-morph siya into PICAD, no? People's Initiative Coalition Against Dynasty, PICAD. Kasama ko dyan sina former dean ng NCPAG, si Dr. Edna Ko, si Dr. Ron Mendoza. At the time, he was with AIM. Si Professor Celia Bulan ng UP, Professor Joe Tabada ng NCPAG, si Leon Flores na naging NYC chairman, youth, no, commissioner, si Archbishop Joe Tabada, and a number of bishops, no, kasama namin. Okay, so we actually tried to come up with a People's Initiative petition, no, but hindi namin na-meet yung required number of signatures nationwide. But anyway, ito po, no, in that petition, we were able to define ano ba yung ano ba yung scenarios of dynasties na gusto nating ipagbawal. There are actually 3. The first scenario is itong succession. The mayor, ang papalit sa kanya, yung anak niya, asawa niya, or yung kapatid niya. No? We call that the first scenario, succession, replacement. Okay? The other scenario is ng dynasty, no, na gusto natin ipagbawal. Itong running in tandem partnership. Mayor, vice mayor, governor, vice governor, president, vice president, magkapatid, mag-asawa, or mag-ina, mag-ama. No? Gusto din natin ipagbawal yun. But the third scenario of a political dynasty na gusto natin ipagbawal is yung running simultaneously, sabay na tumatakbo. No? Halimbawa, yung tatay tatakbo as governor, yung asawa tatakbo as congressman, congresswoman, and yung anak tatakbo as mayor. No? So simultaneous sabay. Ito yung three scenarios where we want political dynasties to be regulated, to be prohibited. Now, doon sa in succession, scenario number 1, hindi papayag ang mga politiko dyan. They will oppose that. No? Because they really want to pass on their post to their kamag-anak. But in my discussions, in my kausap ko ng ibang mga politiko, including dynasties, okay sa kanila yung ipagbawal yung in tandem. Ibig sabihin, tanggap nila na, sige, ipagbawal natin yung running mayor, vice mayor, makasawang magkapatid, pagbawal natin yan. So piecemeal legislation tayo. Next Congress, let's offer that. Just on that, ipagbawal natin yung running in tandem. Mayor, vice mayor, governor, vice governor, and let's see what happens. I have a feeling papasya siya. So this is the number 6 legislation. It's a piecemeal. It's not the whole solution, but it's a solution. That's part of the solution. That's the number 6. Number 7 possible solution is ito yung People's Initiative. Under Section 2 of Article 17 of the 1987 Constitution on amendments and revisions, the people have been given a direct power to directly amend the Constitution through a People's Initiative petition for as long as makuha natin yung 12% of the signatures of the 12% of the total registered voters nationwide, 3% per district. I have a feeling po, kasi sinubukan na namin ito ng 2013, tulad ng mention kanina, Andaya mo in Picad. We were trying to reach the 5.2 million signatures. We got actually mga 3.5, 3.6 million signatures. Limited yung work namin noon. No? Hindi namin na-cover ang maraming lugar. I have a feeling, kung pagtulong-tulungan natin ito, this can be achieved. And in fact, if there is one senator that would champion the People's Initiative petition to amend the Constitution, to pass an to insert an anti-political, anti-dynasty provision, this is possible. Based on my experience, this is very possible. No? This is doable. So, and the last possible solution is if we can elect a president who is truly an anti-political dynasty. If we can elect that kind of can champion the amending the Constitution to regulate or to abolish the political dynasty. He can champion the People's Initiative petition, or he can declare a revolutionary government to draft a new constitution and put in all the radical reforms that he wants to put in that constitution. So yun po yung 8 na possible solutions. And in my opinion, the last 3 options are very possible, are doable and attainable if you all work together. So let me end my presentation doon po. So thank you everyone. Maraming salamat po.
Nagkalat na ang fake news sa social media. Let us fight fake news with the good news of our faith in Christ. Join our social media network and be an advocate of truth for the Philippines and for God's kingdom. We are looking for volunteers in the areas of content creation, research, graphic design, and video editing. To join, send a message to aprilfaliaria.isacc@gmail.com.
Just for the sake of clarity, Attorney Alex, let's begin our conversation by asking you a clarificatory question. Are there good dynasties?
Correct. Thank you, Jael, that you mentioned that. There are good dynasties, but not even 10%. Maybe not even 5%. So, and I've met them, no? But the point is this: do we silence ourselves because of the 5%? Do we stop looking at the problem because there is a 5% that is good? Or do we focus on the 95% that is the big problem? Because that's what I see right now. no? Ang daming tao who are actually anti-dynasty but nahiya sila magsalita because may mga kaibigan sila, no? So we are being silenced by the 5% who are good, and we forget the 95% that is the bigger problem.
That's a very good point that you make, no, Attorney Alex. Baka isa yan dun sa, in coming up with campaign strategies, hindi kaya isa yon sa mga messages that we need to confront.
Yeah.
Kasi if you ask these dynasts, no, these politicians, they would say, maayos naman sa lugar namin. Kami dito sa syudad namin, maayos naman kami.
No.
So bakit nyo kami pagbabawalan?
Correct.
Right?
There are many things they don't see, Dr. Jael. Number one, siguro, number one is kasi they do not see the accounting of the funds and the kind of policies and projects that are being implemented. Kasi pag ang nag-succeed sa iyo ay asawa mo, anak mo, kapatid mo. So hindi halongkatin. So maraming makakalampas, no? Right now the example that I'll give you is the president, no? Nung panahon ni President Noy, ang Office of the President, ang budget niya every year is 1 billion mataas na. Usually mga 800 million in a year, no? In a year, budget ng Office of the President. 1 billion or less. Enough na yon to run the Office of the President, no? But under the present administration, the budget is umaabot ng 4 billion, 4.8 billion, 4.7 billion, at most of which are in donations, no? So, kasi, and walang maglalakas loob na halongkatin yon. No? Ganon din ang mayors, ganon din ang governors. Bakit ba na ang mga roads natin, kalye natin sa probinsya, actually kahit sa Metro Manila, almost every 3 years binubungkal.
Well,
diba?
Sasabihin nila ay sira, kailangan ayusin.
No, but how come in other countries, yung roads nila would last for 10 years, 20 years?
That's
how come sa
true.
atin 3 years lang? And every 3 years, we spend the same amount of money, 100 million, 200 million. So much wastage of the public funds, and those funds could have gone somewhere else.
No, I resonate with the indignation that you have, Attorney Alex. I do resonate.
The Institute for Studies in Asian Church and Culture is now offering formal courses and non-formal courses on transformational development, business and social entrepreneurship, and intercultural studies through the Asian School for Transformational Development. ASTRAD integrates both cultural and spiritual sensitivity into the theory and practice of development and is rooted in the cultures of Asia. ASTRAD seeks to build a new generation of Asian leaders who will serve holistically by combining executive skills and servanthood with faith-based compassion and deep understanding of integral mission. For more information about ASTRAD, email us at isaccglobal@gmail.com or marie@isacc.net.
Every time that you talk about political dynasties like this, how do people respond? Do they get inspired, or do they feel na this is one of those hopeless?
I don't hear the hopeless comments. I always encounter frustrations, disappointments, anger in some cases, no. But at the same time, kasi we're talking to limited audiences, and oftentimes 50%, 60% of the audiences that you talk to are the same. These are the literate, the intellectuals. They understand the problem. So hindi natin naabot yung dapat nating abutin sa baba. I remember one of the questions doon sa kay Attorney Shell Joc, no, and I think sa kay Dr. Ron Mendoza also, no, when he was asked, so how come may mga maraming nananalo ng mga political dynasties, no? Correct, no? Correct. Alam niyo ba na marami silang scholars, no? I know this, marami silang scholars. Yung scholars na yon, sabihin mo on the average, I heard na isang congressman may mga 2,000 scholars. No, on the average. No? Kaya itong scholars nagagaling sa 20,000 kaya. Ito na yung supporters nila. Campaigners na nila ito.
Automatically.
Automatic na yan. Distributed na yan in every barangay, in every purok. No? And these are their people. This is how they maintain their people on the ground. no? And kung ano pa yung mga other services like health cards na i-distribute, doon na yon kasi they want to
Yeah.
take care of these people, no? And
Yeah.
and ang pagpili ng scholarships ng mga scholars nila dyan, hindi by merit, hindi yan by meritocracy. Loyalty yan. In fact, and this one I've heard, no, a number of times na nag-away-away yung mga pamilya on the ground kasi gusto nila mapasok doon sa ng anak nila maging scholar ni congressman. So sisiraan niya yung katabi niya. Sisiraan niya para mapasok yung anak niya. No? So nagsisiraan sila. Nagsisiraan. Nag-aaway-away dahil gusto maging scholar yung anak ni congressman o ni mayor.
I didn't realize that, but that's a great point.
Sinabi ninyo at nabanggit din ni Prof. Ron na noong 1950s, hindi ganito kalala ang problema natin ng political dynasty. So ang tanong ni Ate Cecil ay, what gave way to this? Paano ba nabuo o ano ba yung nag-propel for these political dynasties to emerge and really be this force that we are now finding ways kung paano pigilan?
At the time, medyo malakas yung sense of delikadesa natin ng mga ninuno. O malakas yung sense of delikadesa ng mga ninuno natin noon. But over time, nalaman nila ito that they can get away with it. Kasi nagsisimula lang kung minsan sa 2-3 eh. If they can see that, oh, bakit doon mag-asawa, nakakalusot sila, oh, pwede na rin natin gawin dito. Di ba? Bakit doon kung pwedeng mag-ama, mag-ina? Then, matitempt din yung iba doon sa kabilang probinsya. Kasi, ang dami na eh. Di ba? So, it's that way. It's the broken window theory. If you don't fix the broken window, people think it's okay to break your windows. No? And so they will keep on. But if you fix the broken window, and people will think that, oh, okay. So it's that, no? It's that. There are so many broken windows in our country and the others are gaya-gaya. Kasi nakakalusot.
Yes. Opo. Attorney, I think you're harping on very important points, no? Hindi lang talaga ito issue ng pagtakbo at pagboto, pero it's also we should also engage culture and values, tulad ng sinabi ninyo, yung delikadesa. My question, attorney, what can be done now? Kasi yung education, gusto natin yan, no? Pagsagot sa kultura, sabi nyo nga, kailangan natin talaga yung i-engage din. Pero what can be done at the moment, aside from yung voters' education, which we all agree we should do, pero ano po yung presente ngayon? Na
To add 2 things, Marino. Number 1 is, and I think this is the long term, but it can be done. And I hope, actually, I was hoping that we could have done it dito sa present administration with, kasi kaibigan natin yung Secretary ng Education. No? Pero saddled siya with so many problems, I was hoping that ma-introduce natin yung educational reform na yun. Ano lang, insert natin sa curriculum ng grade 10 and grade 11 yung how to vote, parang voters education program, and how to vote for good leaders for our country. Again, ang context niyan is because one of our biggest problems in the country is leadership. Maraming corrupt, and we don't know how to elect leaders. No? So if we can introduce that educational reform, isang subject, 1 SEM, na nandoon sa grade 10 and grade 11, turuan natin ang kabataan, maniwala ka sa akin, after 5 years, 10 years, we will have a new generation of youth who know how to vote properly and who will not vote for political dynasties. So yun. Feeling ko yung pinaka-effective, no? Introduce that educational reform. Second, yung awareness campaign. And sama-sama tayo, the academe, simbahan, NGO, civil societies, the media, sama-sama tayo, no? If you recall, during the last elections, 2019, Si Jinggoy hindi nanalo. Why? Bakit hindi nanalo si Jinggoy? And si Pong Revilla almost did not win. Why? Because we campaigned against them for yung corruption nila sa PDAF, di ba? Na yung involvement
Exposed, no?
10 billion, di ba? Social media yon, kumalat. Ang daming nagkampanya against them, no? So if we can actually replicate that, but this time in a wider, a bigger scale, possible. Because we have the technology, we have the social media.
So it's not hopeless. It's not
hopeless. It's not hopeless. And tulad ng sinabi ko kanina is we can use this election if we can elect a president who is really anti-dynasty.
Attorney Alex, kasi talking about church and faith, di po ba,
Yes.
as we wind down our episode,
Correct.
ano? Attorney Alex, yung mga minention yung mga dynasts kanina, marami doon Kristiyano eh.
Yeah.
Marami doon Kristiyano. And it breaks my heart. So, where do we even begin?
I think, Dr. Jayel, I think we all know that there are people who are just Christians in name, but they are not really true Christians in their hearts and in their deeds. Or ang level ng Christianity nila is papasok ng simbahan, attend ng service, paglabas, they continue what they've been used to doing. And so maraming ganyang level of Christianity sa akin.
Yeah.
Hindi nila talaga ma-apply sa
Social and political life. Pero ang dangerous doon, Attorney Alex, ito sa sa aking research, ano, and I have really come out in the open and written controversial pieces about this. There are so many churches that back these people up.
Yeah.
Pastors even.
Yeah.
So hindi lang siya individual eh. It's really systemic within the church itself, di ba?
Yeah.
Na parang, well, it's nice to have this influential figure there na pagpe-pray ka namin.
Yeah.
Forget the fact na dami niyang corruption in Dynasty.
Yeah.
That's actually so true, Kuya Jail. Kaya nga, siguro appeal din sa ating mga Christian educators. Baka pwede tayong mag-partner, reach out to us, send a message to us here at ISAK because we really want to create a module or something that we can run. Hindi pa huli ang lahat. May oras pa para talagang punuin ng sustansya, ng talino, ng salita ng Diyos yung ating mga Christian na yung ating electorate populace. But we now want to hear from you, Attorney Alex, as we wind down your words of encouragement or your final words to our viewers sa gabing ito.
Yeah. Gusto ko lang po ulitin yung parang opening line ko kanina. The political dynasties, in my view, they are the biggest obstacle to our country's progress and development. The political dynasties are the #1 root cause of our country's social cancer. No? And they are the worst corruptors of our society. No? But it does not mean that there is no hope. No? As I mentioned kanina, out of the 8 possible solutions, actually 5 doon are doable, 3 are really attainable, the last 3. No? And if we can work together, I think we can find a way to eventually regulate or prohibit them in our society. Let's work together. So thank you.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Alex. This will not be the last time that we will talk about a controversial topic like this. As we draw closer to the elections, you can expect us to pound on this issue all the more. Marie?
Yes, maraming salamat, Attorney Alex, at maraming salamat din sa iyo, Kuya Jay, Kuya Jail. Ngayon dumako na po tayo sa integration ni Ate Melba. Ate Melba?
Merong sinasabing scripture sa atin, and I'm very interested na yung nasa likod na ni Alex, merong picture ng persistence. Ang social reform happens piecemeal actually. Naalala ko yung sa Industrial Revolution, yung mga women and children sa mga factories, no, they were being fed, no, dito sa capitalist na and there were Christians nung panahon na yon who started mga legislation. Pati sila Wilberforce yung sa slavery and maraming mga spate ng social legislation ng panahon, mga labor laws, protecting women and children sa mga factories, etc. So yun, piecemeal. Hindi yun systemic kaagad, no? But i-change yung mukha ng Industrial Revolution sa England. So, posibleng-posible yung sinasabi ni Alex. Kailangan lang is persistence. Tapos siguro dahil ito ay eleksyon, siguro mahalaga for us as churches and as faith communities na this time mag-surface talaga ng faith-based na vote. Sa tingin ko, as Christians, if you ask me, the one single thing na importante sa leadership is yung moral compass. In other words, madali yung mga matatalino madali yung mga marunong mag-communicate sa masa, etc. Pero ang napaka-importante sa isang leader is yung moral compass. Yung sinasabi ni Alex, na who will champion mga landmark na mga reform bills na kailangan para mabago ang ating lipunan. Sa mga churches natin, na sa totoo lang, mukhang instead of being prophetic yung salita ng Diyos na nanggagaling sa ating mga pastor, encouraging pa sila o kaya kinakadal pa sila dahil, mga prominente, magandang sabihin na merong Bible study ako dito sa mga ganitong senador, sa mga ganitong I'm actually, sa totoo lang, isang challenge ito sa ating mga pastor at kaparian. Anong klaseng salita ng Diyos ang naririnig sa inyo nitong mga politician na ito who actually behave in a very non-Christian way? I mean, maaaring nagbibigay ng mga tithes, maaaring mataas yung kanilang mga offering. Pero, how do they actually function in governance? Are they actually bearing witness to the reality of God's kingdom in politics? Mayroon ba silang naririnig sa inyo mula sa salita ng Diyos that should help them to reform themselves in their political behavior? Wala po Ang salita ng Diyos is meant for the powerful and those who are not powerful. Wala dapat sinasanto ang salita ng Diyos. At we would like to see itong maraming so-called conversions ng mga malalaking tao, mayayaman ng mga tao. Sa totoo lang, ang isang sign na hinihingi ng ating Panginoong Jesus dyan, yung sign ng Kisakiyos. Kung talagang merong conversion, sabi, magsasakiyos sila. Anong sabi ni Zacchaeus? If I have robbed anybody, I am going to restore fourfold. Kasi yun ang sabi ng Old Testament law. At hindi lang yun, I will give half of my possessions to the poor. Now, ilan po yung mga mayayaman na nandyan sa mga mega churches ang binigbigyan ng ganitong salita? Na if you are truly converted, do a Zacchaeus act. Simple lang yun. Ano man ang nanakaw ko, I will restore. At yung aking napakaraming pera na naamas sa pagnanakaw, I will give it away. Gusto nating marinig yan. At gusto ko ring malaman kung anong klaseng salita ng Diyos ang binibigay sa ating mga kapatid na ganito. So, this is something na siguro mag-awaken na rin tayo bilang mga mamamayan tungkol sa anong klaseng ang pwede natin gawin, anong kapangyarihan na nasa ating kamay. May sinabi si Alex tungkol sa People's Initiative. Sa totoo lang, kung 12% lang naman ang registered voters ang kailangan, kayang-kaya ng simbahan yan. At 3% lang per district, kayang-kaya ng simbahan yan. Yung mga parishes, yung mga churches sa bawat barangay. Sana ito ang baon natin sa gabing ito, and we want to thank si Alex for giving us very doable na mga solusyon dito sa political dynasty. And bigyan po natin ng puwang, space, yung ating mga kapatid na gustong magsilbi sa ating bayan at isupport sila. Siguro itong malaking challenge para sa atin bilang mga simbahan at para rin sa kapatiran at this time. So pagpalain po tayo ng Diyos at salamat kay Alex.